This is a magazine that was done for the company MReal when they still made publishing papers. They're now they sold their papers to Sappi, and the magazine has disappeared. But this is a project. Again, it was interesting hearing Peter talk about Mini and how each issue changed. Well, this issue really did. This magazine really did change every issue. Everything was thrown out every time. It was redesigned. It was reformatted. The whole thing was changed, and it was all based around a theme. Each issue had a theme. It was a magazine that wanted to take the conversation about paper and production values away from the usual home, being the print buyer and production department in publishing companies, and communicate with us, with the creatives working in the magazine publishers. So it was communicating with the editors and creative directors and people involved in hands-on making magazines, and wanting to say, look, this paper's good, so next time you go to your print buyer and say, look, I really think this magazine should be on glossy paper, you don't go and ask for glossy paper, you go and ask for MReal's gallery, blah, 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 blah. So it's just trying to, and that's not a conversation that's normally had back then, certainly. I think people are doing it more now, but back then, sort of 3 or 4 years ago, 5 years ago, it wasn't. So it was a magazine that had to reach people that were very, very demanding. And just as, if you're looking at Carlos and Sky and saying they had very specific needs in terms of what their readers wanted and what the message was and what the audience was and what the idea of how you're going to connect with them was. Well, this is a magazine that had to appeal to someone who buys a lot of magazines, 2 probably gets sent a lot of magazines, and 3 hasn't got time to look at any of them. So this is a magazine that had to try and jump over that hurdle and try and just look interesting and look different and be a bit active and try and get people to engage with it. And for this issue, it was all about, the theme was response. So I'm showing the front cover, I need to come back to that. The idea with the issue was that it's very simply designed, but that every single page was drawn over by an illustrator. So when you received the copy, you thought someone had already drawn all over it. So it was as if there'd already been, so there was the initial editorial content presented, but then on top of that was this other layer as if somebody had already responded to it. So it allowed you to say, this is good, but then in the margin, someone else will say, this is bad. So it allowed a lot of scope for ambiguity and playfulness. And one of the regular, in fact just about the only regular item that appeared in every issue, was a discussion between 2 creative minds working in publishing. And in this case, it was Oliviero Toscani, who at the time was still the man behind Colours magazine that Benetton produced from Italy, but it goes globally. And Eko Eschen, who was the editor of Arena magazine at that stage. The 2 of them were unable to meet because of the distance, but they had an email conversation, and it was what do some artists and writers? Why do some artists and writers provoke a strong response from their audience? That was the basic nature, the subject of their discussion. And it got very, very heated, and so that was the starting point for what was, first of all, an email conversation. So it's presented in a digital style, the imagery and such like, and there are speech bubbles, and it's an angry conversation that gets angrier. But here it was able to use the illustration that was added on top of it to emphasise that anger further. So it's very, very graphic, very in your face. It's very red and yellow and pink and very shouty, and it reflected the content. And that's my point, is that this could have been presented very, very factually, just as an exchange of emails, as an exchange of texts, and you'd have read it and you'd have got the point. But here, because the nature of the magazine allowed me to, I was able to take it further and absolutely make the visuals and the representation of it match the mood of the content itself. And I would argue it becomes a far more powerful piece for the design of it, above and beyond the actual written content itself. Similar things happened elsewhere. I'll just show this quick example. This was just a simple idea, getting across, people in the business talking about CRM, and one of them doesn't know what it is. But the piece obviously being about customer relationship management, and that was an example of where what was a kind of gratuitous overlaying of illustration on top of imagery was put to a very, very specific editorial use to explain the idea. A later version of the same magazine was themed around success, and for this it was much simpler proposition. There was a double ruled border around all the pages. It was all very smart. There was a gold metallic ink. It was all very calm. It was all redolent of kind of smart invitations and seriousness and upmarketness. And there was this is an example. I'll just flick through those pages to get, so I can show you some of them, but to get to this point here. And this is one feature, and as you see, this is very much about making the feature. It's about making the magazine. It's about the fact that the whole piece is held together. There's a beginning and an end. And whilst the borders around the page were about making it look smart and serious and intelligent, it also actually acted as a control to hold the whole thing together. This was about the success in advertising, and the little drop-in spreads from magazines are actually bottom left. There is that September's issue of American Vogue, which is traditionally, not only is it the biggest issue of the year for American Vogue, it's the biggest issue of any magazine at any time of the year, because the amount of advertising they get in their fall issue, which is why the movie recently, the September issue, was based on the September issue. So you've got the cover of the issue, then you've got every single spread from the inside cover through to the contents page that shows the volume of advertising that featured in that issue before you got to any actual written content. So it's everything is there for a purpose. It might be only 1% of people get it, but everything's thought through, and there's a logic and a thought behind it and reason for it to exist.